Hi, and welcome to day 2 of AppSecCon 2022. We're about to kick off our keynote, Scaling Application Security to the Speed of DevSecOps. In this keynote, we've got Bashar Abu Saidu, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Charles Schwab, where he's responsible for leading cybersecurity strategy across all Schwab companies. We've got Teza Mukakvili, who is the Chief Security Officer at ChargePoint. And we've got Nikhil Gupta, who is CEO and co-founder of Armor Code. This is going to be a great conversation, and certainly one which is going to help you as you start to integrate application security into your DevSecOps pipeline. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the day 2 keynote here. Scaling application security to the speed of DevSecOps. We have two great leaders here, Bashar from Charles Schwab, Teza from ChargePoint, but the views and the opinions over here are of individuals, not of any individual company. And my name is Nikhil Gupta. I'm co-founder and CEO of Armor Code. Everybody knows that while the software development has transformed in the last 20 plus years, application security has not much transformed, and it's very challenging in scaling it. So we would love to get some views of both the gentlemen over here. And let me start with you here, Bashar. You have been a security leader over 30 plus years. You started your career as a software developer, and you have worked at several large companies and scaling things. So as the ad modernization has been happening, what kind of challenges are you seeing from the application security perspective, and what are you planning to bring order to this chaos?
Nikhil, thank you for having me today, and it's really exciting to be part of this fantastic event. Obviously, software and application security is near and dear to my heart. There's not a better place to be in cybersecurity than to be part of this space. Just to give you a little bit of kind of my point of view, I'll offer a little bit of background to see kind of how I look at the world from a cyber perspective. Software today runs the world economy. Everything runs in software. Mark Andreessen 15 years ago said that the world will be run by software. It is so true, especially in a hyper and interconnected world where we here in the US represent less than 10% of all the users connected to the internet. So connected software is where we need to be. Software is everywhere. It's running our cars, it's running our planes, manufacturing facilities, healthcare, the OS, the network, even the data center is completely moving toward a software-defined data center. And with the pandemic, what we've seen is a massive acceleration of digital transformation. Everybody's moving toward having everything turned into a digital experience, interacting with their customers. And therefore, time to market is key to success for every single firm in the world economy that we live in today. Having said that, you can only do that through automation and through scale, and you can only achieve scale through automation. Now, let me just say two important principles that I held near and dear to my heart all the way through and enabled me to be successful. A quality software is a secure software. We cannot claim that a software is of a high quality if it's not secure. The second part is the best chance for a cybersecurity professional to succeed is to try to secure the data before it hits the wire, which is within the application itself, within the application, the design, and within the constructs of the applications we create. Having said that, we should not be thinking or relying on any external capabilities to help us secure that software. It comes from within. Now, just to answer your questions around the challenges. Now, if time to market is what's important, and this is how we succeed, we need to scale and automate. We have to address the fact that we need to be part of the team, and we have to think different in order for us to continue to move with speed. There are three key things we need to do. One is we have to align and have a developer mindset. We have to align with developers and digital product owners as well. That means we have to think agile, and we have to fully 100% embrace the DevSecOps models and principles. This is the way to allow us to move with speed and agility. Two, we have to embrace the shared responsibility model. We no longer want to be consultants given requirements and leaving. We want to be the part of the team. We succeed together, we fail together. That means we have to trust that eventually we're moving to a place where developers will be running everything end to end, including the infrastructure. Everything will be automated. If that's the case, we have to embrace the shared responsibility model. The application definition is changing into collection of services, full automation. All aspects of what we do will be fully automated and will be delivered as code. If that's the case, then we have to also think the same way, just like software developers do. We have to deliver security as code. We have to deliver security and capabilities as a set of services. And we have to check compliance for the quality and security of that software as a code as well. That's how we embrace security by design. We have to think security by design all the way through in order for us to be successful.
Thanks for sharing that, Bashar. I really like the three nuggets over here, having the developer mindset, having the shared responsibility and security by design. And that's why I love these conferences, because you kind of learn from the best here. Now, moving over to you, Teza. Teza, you have a great background, 20 plus years experience working in fast-moving technology companies, most recently in EV vehicle. And as Bashar mentioned, that's where the world is moving on automation and electric vehicles and all. And from your experience, what are the challenges are you seeing in the scaling the application security, and how do you plan to address them?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Nikhil, for inviting me to this session, and look forward to having a great panel here with Bashar. Bashar made a very interesting point, which is the world runs on software, right? Like world runs on coffee. I would say the world runs on software, and being at a EV company which is going through its own journey, right, of products which were deployed probably 15 years back, had different kind of capabilities from a hardware standpoint, and versus today. And as a security professional, when we are trying to combine the hardware and see how much of that could be automated, how much of that could be software commoditized, right, across, so that from a security lens we have better control of what is running, what is being released, how much of it can we gate before something hits, and it's on an Aspen mountain where our connectivity is definitely reliant on numerous other factors, right? So from that standpoint, when it comes to DevSecOps and application security as such, we have to think about what kind of third-party components go into our hardware. How does it tie back to the software that sits behind it? So from a control standpoint, our software that goes into the field, definitely we have better visibility, better control. But the hardware that's running in the stations, how do we get it appropriately pen tested? How do we ensure the application security components? Does it follow it? How do we get it certified for different compliance frameworks that are out there? So again, it depends on what kind of customers are using it. So we have to take that into account. So yeah, those aspects are definitely challenging on my end.
No, that's very interesting here, Teza, to understand. And unless you hear a session like this, or have a leader like you don't imagine that you go to Lake Tahoe. I live in California for skiing, and then you have these EV vehicles and a charger over there. But of course, security is paramount over there. And how do you secure that? And it entails a different challenges. So thanks for sharing this perspective here, Teza. So moving on to Bashar here, application security and vulnerability management has been there forever. Right. But with the recent increase in the zero-day attacks on the software security, we had SolarWinds in December of 2020. We had Log4j in December of 2021. Now people are saying it's going to be a Christmas thing every year. And the bad guys like to do that because they know kind of the people are, security people are human. We are all taking break at that time. So they do that. Now, what are the challenges are you seeing in scaling the AppSec? And how and what are you going to do to scale your AppSec?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I tell you, it is interesting what we see happening around us in terms of the increase in the threat landscape, the sophistication, the speed of how we're getting attacked and the impact we're having is pretty significant. And it's almost becoming a recurring annual event once or twice a year where we get the full kind of technology teams to drop everything and just work on some of these zero-day vulnerabilities. But truly, if we go back to the principles of what we discussed, Nikhil, it's really about integrating security in all aspects of the ecosystem. I remember back then in 2010, 11, I was a strong supporter and advocate of what I've seen in moving toward the mobile devices and trusting the mobile devices more. What I liked about them at the time, besides the user experience and the revolution that they brought to having a full computing device in your hand, is the fact that they established a very secure ecosystem around them, which made me more confident and enabled me to trust a little bit more to do a lot more with that device than I did initially before that ecosystem was created. I think we need to do something similar here. We need to think about this holistically and integrate security as part of the team into all aspects of the systems development lifecycle. We cannot just do one thing or two things. We have to think about the tooling that we use to manage the code, to actually do the continuous build. We have to think about the code itself. We have to think about all the security design and the capabilities and think of them as series of patterns that are codified and are available and ready for usage by application developers. We have to think about the testing that we do all the way throughout the SDLC and the operations and how we maintain things after we put things into production, the threat modeling where we think about all the possibilities. Eventually, if we incorporate all of that into the code that we deliver as part of automation, if we deliver it as a service, if we check the compliant as code, and we start implementing, thinking that we only have to rely on ourselves. Think about trusting nobody, zero trust all the way through your systems development lifecycle, including the tooling in the ecosystem. There is no trust unless I trust you and I exclusively give you that right to do what you have to do, implementing the identity and access and authentication and the roles of the least privilege and assuming zero trust. Eventually, that's what you have to do to be able to move past these things. Because if you trust the Apache or the components that you have or the operating system or that there will be firewalls around you to protect you, then you eventually going to be failing. If you think that you have to take your application and put it on the middle of the internet and not have any protection, your resiliency, your security should stand against all of these threats. We're going to be 90 to 98% of where we need to be from a cybersecurity perspective, because everything else will be designed to address the remaining concerns that we have. What if all of the things that we've done don't work? What do we need to do? That's when I rely on the rest of the capabilities and the analytics and everything else. But that's the only way we can do this. Otherwise, we'll always be left hostage, dependent on the trust we built with the rest of the components that we use to make up the software construct that we put together to support the business.
Yeah, no, I think so. Very well said. And I like how you connected it back to the basics and breaking it into two aspects. Essentially, one is proactive, moving security to the left and doing that. And then the second thing is the reactive, because at the end of the day, it will happen and you have to streamline and automate the operations. And in the real world, and that's where the 30 years of experience shows, is that both goes hand in hand. And the more you can move towards the left, which unfortunately you may not be able to do it overnight, but that's a mindset one need to develop. And then you can, be better prepared. And like the idea of zero trust, which is, it's always trust but verify. And you can always get to 98 to 99%. Security is always a cat and a mouse game. But based on the fundamentals you mentioned, definitely can give us an edge. So no, that's great. That's fantastic. Thanks, Bashar. So moving to you, Teza here. Again, you are building an operations, and you build operations on the global level. Right. So what are the challenges that you are seeing in scaling the application security, and what are you doing to scale your operations?
Absolutely. I'm gonna steal a few nuggets from what Bashar just said. But for our team, as we scale, one of the key components is how do we have I would say two different types of thinking. Right. One is, can we step back and take a look at it from a 20,000 feet level, where we connect our end to end, where, okay, this is how the journey starts from our station. This is how it gets into the telecom carrier, from there to our network, and how do we let that whole journey happen, right? And that is where we say, okay, this is the level we want to start our threat modeling on, and we keep it there. But then we definitely also don't want to leave it at that level, but break it into the tiniest component possible for the team's consumption, where we say, okay, this is how we're going to dissect it, and we're going to bring in different tools or methods or processes to ensure that our sense of security or sense of comfort across these different linkages improve. Now it's very easy, right? It's easy for me to say that, this is how we're going to approach it, but how do we solve for it, and how do we appropriately resource the team to be able to solve both these challenges? And I think that's one of my core challenges today, is how do we resource both these pieces? What are those places where we say, okay, let's rely purely on tools to help us scale, versus no, we want our embedded security engineer to spend time in the lab with the hardware engineers, with the embedded engineers, to ensure they learn the tricks of the trade, what's happening, so that is where it goes back to resourcing, and where do we use tools versus where do we develop this craft in-house to scale these security challenges, and about spreading across the globe, right? That's the other thing. How do we ensure that our coverage meets regulations across different boundaries? There are what Europe wants from a station is completely different than how US looks at a station. So we are also taking that into account as we build out the station framework and the security framework that goes into the stations.
That's a great insight here. I like the idea of taking a step back and looking at it holistically, and there's no one size fits all. Right? It's a great segue into the next question here, because people talk about automation, and they think that one size fits all. But thanks for bringing the attention that AI and ML and all these buzzwords cannot solve all the problems. So making sure where you are automating the mundane task, and whereas wherever needed, you have your best engineers doing a threat modeling and all. So again, going to you, Bashar here, and building on top of that. So you have been a strong proponent of security by design, and taking security left, and you shared some good point here about visibility and automation. But if you could just go a little bit more deeper on that why visibility and automation is key to scaling your AppSec program.
Well, I think it's important, like I said in the beginning, that time to market is key. We're moving very quickly, and we're seeing accelerated move with the availability of public cloud, sophistication of public cloud hosting, a combination of SaaS services that are coming online, and making these capabilities available to everybody to move with speed. everything is going to be software defined. And therefore, in order for you to move with speed, you need to be able to integrate security into all aspects. You have to do appropriate threat modeling so you can get the requirements at the speed that you need, be able to incorporate that into your software design. You need to be able to check throughout the SDLC that your code, at the time you are writing your code, that it is secure, it is appropriate, it is of a high quality. And then you need to be able to have access to a set of patterns that allows you to actually address the threats that you've identified and make sure that your software is moving securely. But all aspects of security needs to be thought of through the lens of a developer. Think like a developer, act like a developer, deliver security as a developer, and therefore you're part of a very strong ecosystem. Who doesn't love, Nikhil, a process, especially in a large transactional space? Who doesn't love to be able to scale up and down based on the business that you're dealing with? When you're dealing with a ton of transactions, we can spin up lots of new resources. We can scale our resources. In order for you to do all this stuff, we no longer have to do racking and stacking. We no longer have to wait for equipment to show up. We need to be able to, a moment's notice, to respond real time to the type of demand that we have, especially as we move strongly into digital transformation. That means we have to move at the speed of what the software is moving. And therefore, if we're fully integrating, if we're fully part of everything that is happening, delivering everything as a service, as a code, checking compliance at all times at code, then we can let the analytics and big data and machine learning and data science look for ways by which we can continually enhance and see how effective our design is, and be able to improve it through a continuous feedback loop, and be able to move to concepts like self-healing, where we can take the data, identify a threat, and quickly respond, leveraging a machine with the speed that we need to be able to keep the platform secure and allow the business to do what it's designed to do, which is service our clients. Because everything we see around us from a cybersecurity perspective, from a threat perspective, is designed to look for weaknesses so they can do something they're not supposed to do. We're the good guys trying to help deliver a service that adds value to the customer, and the bad guys are just trying to find ways to have an unauthorized access, to make money the wrong way, and we're not going to let them succeed. That means we have to be 100% right all the time. They only have to succeed once. That's why we need to incorporate machine into our thinking. We need to move with the speed of machine, and we cannot rely in a space where we are having major challenges around talent and finding talent, and in having enough talent to be able to address all the work that we have to codify everything into a software pattern that can be used through that shared responsibility model. And we have to embrace DevSecOps, scale, and be part of that ecosystem.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that perspective. A lot of time people forget, and that's where the mindset shift is needed, which is time to market and securities to help the businesses, which is very important. And bringing the pragmatic aspect that it's very hard to find the right skill set of people over here and automating. And the last part is that bad guys are using machine learnings and machines to attack. So it's better, is that, you need to kind of fight the battle, if you will, with the similar tools here. So it makes perfect sense to, use the automation here. And Teza, now the same question for you, and I would love to get your perspective, because in your industries, apart from the software, as you mentioned, that you have these physical machines or the charging stations in remote parts. So, what kind of scaling and automation are you planning to use, or do you recommend to use?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that engineers should focus on writing the best code possible to make great products, right? And security is job or security's function is to ensure how best to enable that to happen. So that is where visibility and some of these automation aspects that you and Bashar were talking about are so critical. Is let them build it out, but through my tooling and through my automation, provide the visibility so that they understand, or the key stakeholders understand. Yes, this could produce the best code possible, but this comes at this cost versus something else comes at a different cost, right? And that is where the visibility helps me bring different stakeholders to a level setting ground where we can have those discussions happen, and we can track those discussions over a period of time, whether it's years or sprints on multiple quarters, right? So from a visibility and automation standpoint, if a tool helps me bring these different components together, again flowing from end to end, right? So that we get different, whether it's APIs or whether it's the embedded or the code that runs in our cloud. One, as all these applications run, how do we get a single pane of glass to understand that, okay, it's not easy to dissect. Single pane of glass is again an easy word to throw, but how do we bring all these tools that sit below these to enable that to happen? So you have all these tools that run every time a code is checked into a repo. We can kick off a tool. We can check what kind of vulnerabilities are there. But how do we add it back to the context across the chain? Right? That is where visibility is critically important for me when I run the program. And then we're still trying to figure out tying it back to threat modeling in a more synchronous manner, and those are the pieces that we're working through. And yeah.
So I think that's a very important point, and this ties back to what Bashar was saying about the shared responsibility. So thinking like a developer mindset. Now developers, and I used to do development 20 plus years ago, have a different mindset, and security is primarily about governance and all those things. So having the visibility and getting a single pane of glass and getting the context along with what developers are doing together kind of leads into that part here. So again, time flies when we are having fun. I just realized that we have reached the top of the hour here. I had many more questions here for both of you, but again, I want to thank you both for taking out time and sharing this perspective. It's very eye-opening to see, and this is what it is all about. And this conference is to learn from different perspective and different industries. So thanks, Bashar, and thanks, Teza, for your time here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bashar and Nikhil. Yeah, it was great.
Great to be part of the discussion. It's a fantastic topic.